So what McDonald's was excellent at was in their manufacturing and their production, cutting down a lot of waste in terms of the amount of food that they use and the amount of cardboard to kind of ship everything. And with McDonald's, they are doing it in their shipping as well. So they're looking at like gas consumption and the time that vehicles are running. And for Starbucks, they're really doing it in like the cardboard kind of cup section. So they're using 50% less PET, which is one of the hardest things to recycle. And that allows for obviously a more sustainable environment. And you can see how there are different logos and everything. And in terms of how they can correlate with the Quill, obviously the Quill is a restaurant, so they can practice a lot of what McDonald's is doing, obviously at a much smaller scale, but it's a great example for them. And Starbucks is a cafe, and the cafe, Del Dolce, that the Quill uses can implement a lot of those practices as well. So we're going to get into that. And then for the guidebooks, we looked at the UVA guidebook about the buffet-style meals. It cut down on cardboard and what they've implemented on that campus. And then we also looked at the community college system of California as they prepared like a 60-page guidebook on what they could do on each one of their campuses. And it helped us get a lot of different information and good background of what we wanted to implement into our guidebook.
So we looked at the most common sources of waste. Some things that we came up with were the throwaway plastic wrap that's wrapped on the sandwiches. We also saw a lot of coffee cups, the reusable Quill cups with the covers on top that they throw away. The coffee cup cardboard covers. So we noticed that there's a lot of those that are getting thrown out because even on iced coffees they're putting them around the cups, which can be, I mean, it might be their kind of like their sign of like the Quill, but I think that they could be a little bit unnecessary. There's another source of waste would be any food waste that can be used for another dish and packaging for food. So the current waste management practices that we saw for the Quill are the culinary students washing their own uniforms. They'll cut back on water usage and energy use of the school. We can also use extra like leftover meat to create other dishes. So we're kind of recycling, not really recycling food, but we're making sure that we're getting the most use out of it. We're getting multiple lessons out of a single animal by bagging and freezing the meat. So if they, for example, if they had a deer, they could cut up certain parts of the deer, bag it, freeze it, and then provide different lessons to each class. With the silverware and cloth, tablecloths instead of plastic. With plastic, obviously, you're going to be throwing out a lot of utensils and paper and things like that. We also saw that they minimize the amount of food that they buy, and they also do composting in the kitchen.
So as you guys can see, they've already been doing a lot. Obviously, when they came and spoke to us, we learned a lot about what they were already doing, but some of the recommendations that we have will be able to help make the Quill that much more recyclable. So for the situation analysis, obviously the stakeholders are going to be the Quill themselves, the President's Board, and then actually we're going to correlate with the science department. We had a creative idea on how they can work collaboratively with the entire school, and then obviously the culinary department. So the biggest recommendation we came up with was actually a greenhouse that would be run by the science department here on campus. And the best way to kind of get that going would obviously to get the greenhouse on campus. It'd be like a $3,500 cost up front, and then the idea of how to cut back on some of the recurring costs that would come into the greenhouse would be obviously not hiring a new teacher to teach the class and not make it a requirement for all science students, because that could be a little extreme, but have it as like a general elective for science environmental students, and also have it as a gen ed in like the STEM part that I'm sure we all have to take. And it would just be great because you could recycle any like plants that come in by having them in the greenhouse and then bringing them to the Quill to actually use the material that's produced by the plant. And you're going to cut down on your cardboard, you're going to cut down on your shipping, and you're going to obviously save financially. But aside from the recycling part, it'd be a great addition to the school and the department. And we also want to get people to use containers, reusable containers. So kind of like you have in the cafeteria, where you get like the green boxing, use that for the quill. We also want to cut down on the wrap that they're using, as we talked about, because there's really no point in wrapping up 100 different pastries and then you only sell 50, and you just use 50 like pieces of the plastic wrap that are just going to be thrown away. So we want to like keep in like a reusable container, and also we want to give the extra food to the munchies truck to sell. That will help us the marketing of the quill by having the product going through a different sales line, and also just helping out another organization on campus. And the last thing we want to do is to kind of have like assignments in the classes on sustainability practices for the culinary students. So that's a good way to actually see like the metrics behind what is going on in the quill and understand if the students understand the recycling practices.
Okay, so sustainable practice training strategy. We want to train all the employees and the students how to conduct these sustainability practices, and then conduct mandatory informative meetings like every semester or every year, and then create a sustainability club that would, work in the greenhouse and becoming sustainable throughout campus.
For the sustainable practices awareness strategy, it's important to have step-by-step reminders and posters throughout the workplace like the quill, so that people can look at them and see what they can recycle and reminds them to recycle. Handouts to all the employees and students that are always in the quill, so that they can refer back to those if they have any troubles with knowing what they can recycle. And social media, this new on campus, social media links are very helpful to spread awareness about sustainability on campus. Our final recommendations are based off of some of the guidebooks we looked into and what the quill is already doing for sustainable practices. Our final recommendations are minor changes like plastic cups and reduce the amount of plastic wrap around pastries, but also the greenhouse and sustainability club, so that people can get involved, and the sustainability club will help the greenhouse.